Good evening, boys and girls. Now, I don't have a story for you tonight, just some ramblings about cats. Hopefully you like cats. I do. What about cats? Cat spirit. Cat spirit, and what a cat, how cats can help us. How cats can help us develop and become better human beings. So a cat. What is a cat? Elementally, let's start at the very basics. I think a cat is a mixture of fire and water, primarily. I think that's that's its strong suit. I think cats have this emotional depth, which all animals have emotional depth, but cats particularly have this sort of, I don't know, to me is an aquatic, mercantile feeling to them. The way that they sort of become water when they sit down, their bodies sort of just melt into wherever they're sitting. And they have all of these sort of particularly very potent emotions when it comes to intimacy and trust, and we'll get into that later because I'll do another video on dogs as well, because dogs and cats are the epitome of each other and they can teach us so much about trust. Anyway, back to cats. Cats have emotional depth. They can be greedy little things, can't they? They can be jealous of other cats. They can be, very short-tempered. And when this temper kicks them off, they are vicious little warriors. They will bite and scratch, and I mean, you've seen or you've probably heard cats fight. They are manic little things. So going down the elemental table, so to speak, I think what a cat really feels like to me is like a thick oil. This oil, like a sort of an oil that can just sort of like loop around, move through little tight holes and sort of soak into things and hide, sort of like sit there, unnoticed for a while. And then when you bring a flame to it, it bursts into action, into this big conflagration, hot to the touch, painful. I think that feels a lot to me like a cat. So cats, I think, I like to think spiders are quite similar to cats. I think they both have a similar kind of energy. I think they might both come from the same root archetype or have connections to it in that sense, though their composition probably differs a fair bit. Anyway, to get back to cats, what did I want to talk about today? Yeah, intimacy. I think cats have a lot to teach us about intimacy, and I think there's a reason why it is the pet of choice for the old cat lady. Obviously the name and all, but like they are often used almost as a surrogate for people who are unable to deal with intimacy. And they can teach us, having one around the house or just considering their energy can teach us a lot about our approach to intimacy. Because a healthy cat knows its boundaries perfectly. A healthy cat knows when to provide intimacy and when to hold it back. I think a good example of this is you walking out one day, you meet a cat and it's very friendly, it comes up to you, it sort of snuggles on your leg and then it sort of rolls on the floor, purring. So you go up and you give it a scratch behind the ear. And then, it's got its belly out, so you think, oh, I'll give it a rub on the belly, just like my uncle's dog. So you give it a rub on the belly and it goes, you get a big scratch on your hand, and you start to bleed because you've crossed the boundary there. And I think this is something that we should all take in. We need to know where our boundaries lie and what to do when people cross them. And maybe you don't need to make them bleed, but you do need to set your boundaries fiercely. So a healthy cat knows its boundaries, and there's many examples of, unhealthy cats. We've bred all our pets to be little pathetic little creatures, haven't we? Little lap dogs and lap cats. But yeah, a good lesson, one of the many lessons we can learn from cats is understanding your boundaries and your intimacy. And I'll do a video on dogs later, because dogs have another mirror similar to cats about trust. What else should I say about cats? Oh yeah, just let's finish off on, there's this one story I like about cats. So now around the world, cats are all, you know, they're known as creatures which sort of absorb negative energy. And I think we've all felt this, you know, with any sort of animal, particularly with cats. Sometimes, you know, you've had a long day at work and you sit down and your cat comes up and rubs against you, and it releases a lot of tension there. And being around any animal helps that. But I heard this story about cats and I can't find the source of it anywhere. I'm really sorry, but I love it and I want to spread it. Like I said, I think cats are mercantile. It suits, you know, it suits them in a way. You know, a ship always used to have a cat for luck. I think that kind of suits them. And I like this idea that these cats, the cats, they take your negative energy. And they don't just absorb it, they take it and then they go outside, or they find the dark parts of your house and they sell it off to all the little creatures, all the dark little, tiny little creatures of the darkness that live in the nooks and crannies of your house, in your garden, under rocks and in the dark parts of bushes and stuff. And I just love that whole idea that they, you know, they're sort of, because they've got that air of sort of, you know, wealth to them. So I like this idea, they take it and they sell it off. But yeah, an ancient archetype, the cat, something we should all study well, I think. But that's all I have for you tonight, boys and girls. So thank you very much for listening. I may move these types of videos to a different channel. I've made it already, it's called Hail the Black Shark. There's some garbage on there already. I need to do a video about the black shark, explaining what that is, because that's a potent myth from the UK, which you might enjoy. But that's all for tonight. Good night.